Welcome back. On this episode, I'm chatting with Sherif Mityas, the CEO of BRIX Holdings, a multi-brand company that owns and operates some really cool brands, one of which is Friendly's. On this episode, we get a deep dive into what Sherif sees in store for Friendly's, which is a legacy brand, has been around for a really long time, has deep loyalty and affinity across its demographics on the East Coast, and is now trying to make a move into fast casual, is also trying to make a move to expand and revamp its menu. So this is a really cool episode. We also get a chance to understand Sherif's philosophy around picking the brands that he invests in, and also some amazing lessons around treating your customers and your team well. So I hope you enjoy. Sherif, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Dallas, Texas, the headquarters of BRIX Holdings.
Amazing. Last time I was in Dallas, I think that was for FS Tech, and that was almost a year ago. So I always get excited to go back to Dallas. It feels like everything in Dallas is either a restaurant with a drive-through or a gun range. It's kind of like the two. There's no in-betweens there, but really excited to discuss with you all sorts of topics around your growth journey with Friendly's as the concept, and also learn more about BRIX as an entity and how you guys are able to kind of navigate with multiple concepts under one roof. So very excited to kind of jump in the conversation. Always first like to ask my guests to tell our audience a little bit about themselves. How did you get into the restaurant industry? And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, well, I guess my first foray to the restaurant industry when I was 15, I was flipping burgers for a summer job up in Wisconsin where I grew up. And then, obviously went on and did a number of other things, mostly in the retail space for a majority of my career. And then was also consulting to the restaurant industry for a while, and then joined the TGI Fridays group down here in Dallas. First as their CIO and Chief Strategy Officer, and then took on the added role of Chief Experience Officer, which allowed me to take on kind of everything that touches the guest, from marketing to culinary innovation, and then had this opportunity to join BRIX Holdings at a time where we had about 5 brands at that point, Friendly's being the largest one, the chain in the Northeast. And then we've picked up a few brands since then. So now we're currently sitting with 8 brands, about 300 some locations across 40 plus states. And everything from Friendly's, which is a 90-year-old family dining, casual sit-down restaurant on the East Coast, to our frozen yogurt concepts, Red Mango and Orange Leaf. We have Smoothie Factory plus Kitchen. We just acquired last year Clean Juice, which is the only USDA certified organic juice bar chain in the country. And then we have Humble Donuts, Pizza Jukebox, and Super Salad just to round us out. So that's it's a little bit about my background and BRIX.
That's a wide variety of concepts you have under one roof. I would love to dig deeper into understanding how you pick brands, but let's first take a step back. So BRIX Holding, did you guys start off as a franchisee of Friendly's, or did you guys come in and acquire the brand? Do you guys grow the brands in-house, or you guys come in and acquire? Curious about that.
Yeah, we acquire. So okay. The first brand we acquired a number of years before my time was Red Mango. That was kind of the first brand. And then there was acquisitions from that point. And then we actually bought Friendly's out of bankruptcy, believe it or not, a month before the pandemic hit. And so great time, to join and to get a big casual sit-down dining chain. But no, we acquired them. At the time, they had corporate-run restaurants as well as franchise locations. We have since refranchised the corporate locations, and now the whole brand is just franchised. We normally act franchisor. Yeah. So that's really what our focus is to be the franchisor for a portfolio group. Allows us to create basically the economies of scale that's required from a portfolio perspective, and still provide what each of our brands and our franchisee partners need, by brand going forward.
Right. That's a good point. I think, we've seen different brands over the years evolve from having almost like an equal split of corporate to franchisees, locations. And then over the years, we've seen kind of the franchisors move away from owning their own locations to make the economies of scale work out, as you mentioned. How do you stay connected with your franchisees? That's one of the things I hear a lot about is, even if corporate gets their game out of owning their own restaurants, they maybe have one or two that they like to run so they can stay in touch with the customers and also with their franchisees? How do you guys stay connected?
Yeah, so we have for each of our brands, we have a very great kind of core group of advisory council members. So it's a handful of our core experienced franchise partners, and they're our eyes and ears, right? So those conversations we're having every week, every month with that group. What's going on? What are you hearing from your customers? What are you hearing from your team members? What processes are working or not working? So they're really kind of a call it an extension of our corporate governance. And so things that we want to roll out, they obviously pilot for us. Things that they're hearing that they bring to us, we should be thinking about this or that because this is what's going on the ground. So we utilize those advisory councils almost as an extension of our corporate team and those franchisees. And we're able to use their stores not only as test beds, but as learning centers as well to be able to stay that, to your point, connected to each of the brands and their specific requirements and needs, really, in terms of the franchise community going forward.
That's actually really good. Really good point is, for my audience of franchisors that are listening, having your franchisees be part of the decision making is crucial. Right? They can't be sitting in the sidelines waiting for you to make those decisions. I think I remember, I believe you spoke at FS Tech around how you bring franchisees into the discussion for making technology adoption decisions. Maybe if you could share, kind of walk me through that process when you guys decided to overhaul your tech stack at Friendly's. How did you bring the franchisees into the decision, and how did you frame those initiatives to get the green light from them as well?
Yeah, I think, for especially technology investments that tend to be large, right? And it's different than trying to sell a marketing campaign, right? Where you say, if you spend this, we'll be on the radio, we'll be on TV, we'll be in print, we'll be on social, and you see a return almost immediately, right? From a technology perspective, you got to sit and go, okay, what are some of the things that would make X easier? And X can be anything, making your GM's life easier, making your team members' life easier, making your guests' experience better, making you make more money within your four walls, right? Operationally, efficiently creating something that makes the needle move. And so you got to start with that and really understand from a franchisee perspective in their shoes, what would be important to him or her, right? What would make me want to spend $1, right? On something that I don't know about, I'm not sure about, you're trying to sell me. I have to understand from their perspective, if this, call it technology, can save you $1 here or make you another dollar there, that let's have a conversation, right? And so it starts that with what's in it for them. What's in it for them from a return perspective, from a make my life better or more profitable perspective. Then they have to be part of that decision process, right? So like any group, we have 5 people that could potentially do that technology, right? Well, here's the pros and cons of each 5. In fact, I want you to sit in on the sessions when we get demos, right? I want you to be part of that process so that you're understanding the same thing we are, so that we all hopefully get to the same decision that this partner with this solution makes the most sense and will deliver the return on investment that we're all going to be looking for. And then they're your pilot group, right? They're the ones where you're setting up the sandbox. They're the ones that are providing input on, I'd like to see this different or this changed. And once you make them part of that process, then when you're going to the full franchisee community, it's not me selling it, right? It's my franchise advisory board saying, no, we were part of this. This works. It's been in my store for a month now, 3 months now.
Absolutely.
And this is the right thing to do, right? And so that just makes obviously the entire process a little bit more, I'd say not painless, but it makes it a little bit easier
Yeah.
in having that connection and having them along throughout the process.
Right, right. You get some buy-in, right? And a lot of the times the franchisees, they talk amongst themselves and they're very loyal to one another, and they respect the advice. They respect the introductions they make to technology vendors. I think that's key in the business. And one of the more exciting things that I saw that y'all were working on was this pilot for a fast casual concept for Friendlies. I don't know if you guys have been running this at scale or if it's still remaining a pilot, but curious how did you think about turning or potentially churning Friendlies into a fast casual brand? And then also back to our previous conversation, how did the franchisees react to that pilot, and how were they involved?
Yeah, so I think the pilot originated from we are seeing a changing demographic, right? So
Absolutely.
lots of consumers now that have shifted to convenience, speed. I don't have time to sit down. And you see that, right? In some of the fastest growing brands out there, they're in the fast casual space, even more than
Absolutely.
QSR. And so we're like, how would you think about taking a Friendly's 90-year-old brand that's based on bringing the family in, sitting around a table for an hour and a half, and turning it into a fast casual? So, like all great but maybe crazy ideas, you got to pilot it. And so we found a spot, built a prototype fast casual with the drive-through, the whole kit and
Whole
caboodle, and
shebang.
yeah, and tried it, right. And so the interesting thing, the feedback he got is from the folks that are so inbred into the brand that what Friendlies means to them has been so ingrained they hated it.
What does it mean? What does friendly means? What does friendlies mean to them?
It means bringing the family, spending an hour plus, having the server, having the experience, having the big ice cream sundaes, everything right there, family
Awesome.
dining out. To go up to a counter and to go through and then take a number and have it was completely alien. It was not the Friendlies experience. They hated it. Now, a whole new demographic had heard about Friendlies ice cream, right? That's the only thing they heard about, right? This was like, this is great. I can come in, grab my ice cream, grab maybe a melt, some fries, and I'm out. And so, okay, good learning, right? I probably don't want to put these things in the Northeast where there's lots of Friendlies and consumers that know Friendlies for a certain occasion and a certain purpose. But there's a lot of brand recognition and name recognition for Friendlies outside the Northeast, where there's a lot more of, let's call it a younger demographic, that this concept and this model actually may do very well. It allows us to be in a smaller box, better unit economics. And that's when you get to the franchisee discussion. I'm not saying we're not going to be building big Friendlies. In fact, we just built one and opened one in Orlando. But this gives us another alternative, right? This gives us another model that may work in different real estate in different parts of the country where some of those franchisees may want to open and operate a Friendlies, but not spend X number of dollars, may want to spend half that and get that Friendlies experience and extend it to another part of the country. So that's the balance that you have to play. And that's really for every brand. You can't give up who you are, right? You can't just walk away from years of what consumers know you for. And so that's why you got to be really careful when you start thinking about changing formats. Maybe the right place at the right time for the right demographic, it works, but it's not a wholesale change.
I love that. And so, how did you keep the Friendlies ethos alive in that fast casual pilot? How did you keep the brand and what it's known for in this new format, new environment?
Yeah, and the key starts with families and kids, right? Friendlies is kind of known for families and kids. And so you can't give up kind of that fun atmosphere, even if it's a fast casual, right? There still has to be balloons. There still has to be lots of fun things on the walls and sprinkles and ice cream flavors and people moving around with big sundaes in their hands, right? And so that type of kind of core fun family joy of ice cream has to be in regardless of the format. And so that's what we really pushed. And when we introduced little things that you could do in a fast casual format that would work, like ice cream sandwiches, right? So more of a grab and go versus sitting with a big glass goblet of ice cream, put it in between two cookies and you're out the door, right? So you can still kind of keep what is known for Friendlies, but in doing it in a different way, even from a menu engineering perspective, to make it work for a different format.
I see. And did you take away certain elements? So you're still able to get that large ice cream sundae at the fast casual location as
You
well?
can. Yeah, you got it. You
Okay,
still got to keep the core, right? Because if
got it.
someone's coming in looking for their hunk of chunk of PB fudge
Right.
sundae, you got to have it on the menu.
Yeah, that's such an amazing experiment that you ran. I love this industry because we are able to run these experiments and see what works and see what doesn't, and then sort of incorporate it into the growth of the business. I think a good example recently is the recent headlines with Cosmix, right? With McDonald's, they decided to close down that pilot. And on the surface, it looks like it didn't go well, right? They're closing it down, but they learn how they can operationally include that into their core business. And it verified that this is a model that's successful with the younger demographic. And it's keeping that long-term view and in the short term, maybe taking a little bit of a hit in the name of research and development, right? Like I'm in the tech industry. We spend millions and millions of our entire P&L is just a massive line item for R&D, but we use that as a way to develop new products, innovate, and compete. So I commend you for doing that. And I think I'm assuming you guys are going to be opening up new fast casual locations in the future. Which
Yeah.
markets are you targeting?
Again, probably more, let's call it west of the Mississippi, right?
Okay.
Some maybe in the south. But we've also got plans for a lot of the kind of traditional bigger box sit down restaurants. Probably 3 to 5 of those in the next call it 12 to 18 months.
Very, very cool. Let's take a step back and want to learn more about BRIX as a platform. What are the types of brands and operators that you're looking for when deciding to invest in a new concept? What is on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a couple things that we look for. First, at its core is like any restaurant chain, the food, the menu, right? It's got to be good. You can have all the bells and whistles you want around a brand new hot chain, but if consumers go there and they don't like actually the core food and beverage that's being served, it's not going to last. At its core, the bones, what I call the bones of the brand, have to be solid, craveable food and drink. Second, I think there has to be some unique hook, right? There has to be something that sets it apart. So, for instance, when we bought Clean Juice, there's lots of juice bars out there, right? This is the only USDA organic. It's the seal on everything that goes out the door. No one else has that. Not Nectar, not Jamba, not Smoothie King. No one else has that. And so there's a unique hook that creates, again, a consumer or a guest affinity to the brand. That's very important to us. What's different about this versus all the other competitors out there in that space or sector? And then third, to your point, it's got to be because we buy franchised, right? Brands is the franchisees. So we go and speak to lots of franchisees before we acquire a brand. We understand their passion, their commitment, their focus. How are they as operators? How are they in their community? What are they doing to help grow their brand, right? And so that's kind of the 3 legs of the stool, right? So if you've got something that's just great, that people crave, if you have passionate franchisees, and you have this unique hook that makes people think of you before someone else. So you'll notice I didn't mention a cuisine type. I didn't mention a size. I didn't mention, part of a geographic area. It's these other attributes that we look for when we look to acquire new brands.
So it seems like you are very then selective with the types of deals that come to your table.
We are, and we have to be, right? Because I mean, the big guys, right? The Inspires of the world and the to-go foods. I mean, they're going off and buying Dunkin' and Sonic and
Right.
and those guys, and they're at a different scale. But the same principles apply, right? For their portfolio group to work, those guys like us, you have to ensure that from a cultural perspective, the fit works behind the scenes, right? Because everything below what I call below the skin that guests don't see has to be common for this economy of scale to work. So we have one supply chain team. I don't have
I
8.
see.
I have one
Across all the
technology team.
brands,
Right.
across all the brands, right?
All the brands. I have one technology team, not 8. I have one finance team, not 8. You've got to be able to create that kind of synergy behind the scenes. And that's so the brands have to have some fit. And for us, it's kind of cultural connection and how they work together. Now, things that guests see, like the marketing, that's very brand specific. Friendly's marketing team is not doing Clean Juice. Those are very different guests, very different value propositions. And so those things you have to keep separate because the guests view them as separate. But no one cares that we have one person buying strawberries for 8 brands. I don't need a Friendly's only buyer of strawberries. That's the difference.
I see. I find that so fascinating. My first role out of college was actually working in one of these large conglomerates. I worked at Clorox, and I saw how this massive engine was able to run all these different brands. And in some ways, they had an amazing supply chain. That's what they're known for. They had amazing manufacturing, but they also learned how to respect each of the different brands, right? And some they bought out Burt's Bees, the lip balm company, and the culture of that team, while they did share a lot of the infrastructure behind the scenes, was very Birds Bees esque. Versus the team that was running the charcoal division was completely different, right? They were more in touch with their market and their audience, and behind the scenes, you had Clorox as the engine that powered it. I find it really fascinating, and how these brands can share the synergies of a platform like yours and grow even more profitably. I'm curious around, when do you think it is the right time? And this is a very tough question. You can take it any way you want. When is the right time for a brand to get bought out? When is the right time for a brand to join a portfolio of brands? What is the kind of like the signals that you think are, maybe give it a good indicator that this might be the way forward?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's tough. I know because we've talked to many founders that started right with one store, then they got to 20, then they got to 50, and it's a hard decision, right? When do you kind of pull the cord? Um, from my perspective, I think if a founder or someone that has a chain is really looking at it, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. One is, if I really want this, my baby, to grow, can someone else grow it faster, better than me? Am I at a point where I'm kind of tapped out because I don't have the infrastructure, I don't have the experience, or I don't have the network, or I don't have something that you believe you are now running into as a roadblock, right? So you ask yourself the question, I only opened 5 new locations last year, and I could have opened 15 if it wasn't for X.
X, yeah.
Right. And so at that point, you're like, well, there's other people that have X. And so if it's not about me and it's about this brand and I want them to grow and I want them to grow faster and better and be more successful, then when you start running into those roadblocks, when instead of opening 15, you only open 5, when instead of getting 20 points of margin, you only deliver 10. When it's those things that are driving a gap in what you believe as the owner of that chain you should be achieving, and you ask yourself seriously, there's other people that could fill that gap. There's other people that could close that gap. Then it's time to look. Then it's really time to put on an honest, kind of look in the mirror and say, someone else is now better equipped to take this to the next level, and it's time for me to exit. And
I love
that's
that.
always tough, but if you're truly in it for the betterment of the brand, you make that decision.
Right. I asked Jim Bayless a couple episodes ago what it's like to come in and then work with that founder. We all know founders, especially of restaurant brands, have an
Yep.
ego, have a
Yes.
personality, have things that they are very biased, not biased, but they're very strong-headed over.
Yes.
What is it like for you to come in and then work with that founder, either to make them an executive, to become a leader, or to have that tough conversation like, hey, maybe someone else needs to come in and take the helm for the betterment of the brand?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a cop out, but our model is we require kind of a full ownership when we acquire a brand. And we actually, in some cases, we'll have like a 30, 60-day kind of consulting agreement, right, to help us through the transition.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But we are part of our deal is we exit the founders.
I see.
And for part of that reason is to what you just brought up. We feel like we need to be able to make the decisions, make a clean break, and really take the brand onward with respect to what's been built, right? And understanding those learnings. But it's never, at least in my experience, a productive relationship when you're still trying to get rooted into the past versus
Right.
moving forward.
I see. I see. That's interesting. And I do like that point of view. I can see both sides, right? In some ways, the founder could be critical to the brand, but it's also, you have a tried and tested model that works. And as part of your engine of growth, certain things need to be done, and that's just one part of it. And I'm curious if, looking into the next, let's just call it 2 to 3 years. If I had to have a conversation with you in 2 to 3 years and I asked you, what did you accomplish, right? What would be some of those agenda items, and what would you want to get done to be proud of in that time frame?
Yeah, I think it comes down to one word, which is growth. For us, in a couple of years, we will have hopefully added at least two more brands into the portfolio. We will have added at least another, call it, 40 to 50 units of organic growth of the brands that we do have, separate from the acquisitions. Growth of our franchisees, growth in our profitability, growth in the portfolio. To us, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And so every year we have growth targets. 2 years from now, no different. We'd want to be much larger.
You mentioned at the beginning, you guys only invest in brands that have a franchising component of it, that are franchising, right? That are not independent. Have you ever considered investing in a brand that hasn't yet started franchising and then helping them through that process?
We've taken a look at some small brands, like in that kind of call it the 15 to 20 unit range of folks, founder led, again, that I've been thinking about franchising. Those are a little tougher nuts, to be honest with you, because there's so much effort that then has to be built in terms of, all the operating manuals and the books and the franchise agreements and all those pieces. So we haven't been on one of those yet. Never say never, but we're, again, to me, it goes down to those three things I mentioned earlier. If we found something with a great team, great food, and a unique hook, we'd consider it.
Yeah. And how do you, for the first point, for the customers loving the product, how do you go through and do that due diligence? Do you look at reviews? Do you, I've heard some people go in and become like a secret shopper and look around and ask the guests and the teammates of what they think of the brand. What is your strategy around that?
All the above. Yes, we
All the
mystery
above.
shop the heck out of it. Before we bought Clean Juice, I visited at least 20 locations myself around the country. But then we go on social, right? We see what people are saying. We see what the buzz is on their social media channels. We see what the buzz is on Google and Yelp and all the other platforms. It says a lot, right? What those experiences were, what people are talking about, the hype. And so it helps us understand it. And then we'll even do like mini focus groups, right? We have some consumers in different demographics around the country, and we'll say, have you heard of this brand? Tell me your thoughts, right? Just get some unvarnished feedback. And, we do that as much as we can with consumers. I mean, we'll test new items. We'll look at new brands. We'll look at new concepts. To me, if the consumer's not saying it works, then it really doesn't matter what anyone in this building thinks.
Exactly.
It's all about the guest. They pay our bills at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And you can see in the restaurant industry, you can see when a customer is truly delighted with a product. You can see it in their eyes, and
100%.
people will talk nonstop about the brands they enjoy. When you have something like that, regardless of how big you are, I think it's really special. And that's something that I'm trying to elevate on this show, is that regardless of how much money you're making, regardless of how many stores you have, regardless of how much experience you have, if you have a brand that people love and you want to grow, there's so many avenues to do that. And I think for you and your team, you've done a great job of finding those brands and breathing life into them and bringing in your expertise. And I wish you guys all the best. Sharif, I have one last question for you. I always ask my guests, who in this industry inspires you? Who in this industry has given you something to look up to? Who do you look up to in this industry? And would love for myself to learn who they are and for my audience to also check them out.
Well, that's an easy one. It's actually the chairman of my board. It's John Antioco. So
John
I had
Antioco.
opportunity to meet John many, many years ago. He was the CEO at Blockbuster and I was the CEO at Movie Gallery. So we were both in the same industry together, not in food. And then he went on to be very big in food, and he's been an 8-time CEO at Taco Bell and PF Chang's and Fridays and Circle K, and learn a lot from him every day that I have the opportunity to interact with him. Always been a role model of mine and a mentor, and I'm thankful that he's on my board and helping lead this team.
What's something unique about his leadership style or his personality you think makes him successful?
I think the thing I most appreciate him is he's honest to a fault. He won't sugarcoat, and I love that, because this industry is about doing right by the guests, and it's about speed, and it's about honesty at all levels, all the way down to the hourly team members. And I've always got that from him, and I appreciate that.
Amazing. Sharif, thank you so much for joining the show. Thank you for sharing with us your wisdom. And I'm excited to see where you guys go in the next 2 to 3 years. Wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Have a good one.